This is the Mediate Now with Winter Wheeler. Your clear choice for expert mediation and negotiation advice. But it's so much more than that. Take our advice, you will improve your entire life. Are you ready? Let's get to it. Hello, Dr. Ericka. I'm so excited for you to be here today. Thank you. Dr. Ericka Goodwin is amazing. That's like an understatement, right? Okay. So Dr. Ericka is Harvard trained. She is double board certified in child, adolescent, and adult psychiatry. She is a 3-time best-selling author. I adore you, Ericka.
Oh, you always make me feel so special. Like I need to talk to you every day.
Please do. I could talk to a psychiatrist every day. I don't think my therapist would frown upon that. uh, no, but Dr. Ericka, I was thinking about this recording today, a little earlier, and I was just, of course, running through like all the times that we have recorded previously and gotten to work together before. And I'm telling you, I have had some of the best times recording with you.
Oh, you have?
I really have. And it's crazy because we're at that stage in COVID where it's hard to tell like who you've met in person and
I
and who you
know.
haven't, right? And so I definitely feel like I've met you in person before, and I know I haven't, but I've known you for a year now.
I feel like at some point we just need to do a drive-by and like, hey,
Right, like she really does exist. Hey.
I feel like Pinocchio. Pinocchio I'm a real girl.
I'm a real girl. I love that. That's hilarious. Say that again.
I'm a real girl.
It's funnier when you say when you say. Uh, but anyway, anyway.
I love the cartoon. So
Oh my goodness. Okay, so all joking aside, we are here to talk about a very serious issue. But like I said before, Dr. Ericka, this show is we talk about serious things, heavy topics and all of that, but joking is welcome. Levity is the name of the game here. So, for the audience, the main topic is grief. And I wanted to talk to you about this because it has been coming up in in my mediations a lot lately, more so than usual. And of course, that has to do with the increasing number of COVID victims
right.
at this point. So I'm seeing a surge in clients who tell me um, that I understand that my accident or the lawsuit or the breach of contract or whatever is not related to the fact that I've lost 3 family members in a year, but I have lost 3 family members in a year and I'm not doing well and I don't want to deal with this lawsuit and I don't know that I can go through with this today without falling apart, And I listen, I am glad when someone tells me that when they're self-aware and they can say that that's an issue, of course, but I don't always know exactly how to help them. So I'm an empathetic person naturally, but I want to make sure that I'm handling the grief process properly. Does that make sense? I think maybe.
It does, and I think that's the challenge a lot of people are having is that these conversations are spilling out into everything. So you have people dealing with it that wouldn't necessarily even be in a sphere of influence that you'd be talking to about this stuff.
Absolutely. So typically, I don't talk to my clients about, deaths or any other type of loss in their life other than what's related to the issue that we're there to deal with that day.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't usually happen. However, like I said, I'm seeing an uptick in people bringing all of that to the table. And, one of the things that I like to talk about a lot um, that I consider myself, different. I have a different take on. I consider myself to be a different type of mediator, I guess I would say, is that I empathize with people in a way that helps them get through their problems and find closure at the end of our day, right? So even if I only spend 8 hours with you, my goal is to help you get closure by the end of that day. What is what has become difficult is people presenting with tons of issues that clearly I cannot resolve by the end of the day and that are affecting their decision making and affecting how they view everything that's happened to them since the passing of that loved one. I don't know if that makes sense, Dr. Erica, but if it doesn't, I can give you an example.
Oh, it definitely makes sense.
Okay. So I guess what I'm hoping to learn from you is what does the grief process really look like? And how can I start to determine where a client might be in that stage of grief so that I can appropriately approach them and help them? And if settlement for them on that day is not an appropriate answer, then I want to know that too.
Well, I give you credit for asking a complicated question.
I'm sorry. Please take all the time you want to think about that and answer.
But if you kind of break it down, they have the stages of grief, but rather than turn this into an entire academic conversation, I think the biggest concern, especially for what you're doing, is whether or not someone is in a mental capacity or a space where they can process the information correctly that you're dealing with in your mediation.
Right.
Because one of the things that happens with grief and with any kind of intense emotion is naturally people sometimes don't feel like they have full levels of mental clarity, and oftentimes people have difficulty sleeping, their moods are a little bit out of whack, they may be anxious or sad, even irritable or frustrated, depending on what the loss is. Some of the conversations that you may need to have may be triggering, or especially if it's in a situation where someone's already has a bunch on their plate emotionally from dealing with this loss. And then if it's a contentious mediation that they're not necessarily emotionally fortified to deal with. And what I would say is the first thing is almost in this kind of time, things you would typically screen for aren't typical right now. They just aren't typical. So one of the things is if you knew you're dealing with a client that has these huge losses, is there a handful of things you can ask them to try to do to the best of their ability before it's time for them to make either major decisions about their mediation or go into the actual sit down mediation process, which I guess now might be Zoomed.
Right.
Not quite everybody sitting around the table, but just some simple things as far as trying to get some sleep and rest, making sure that they actually eat, talking to whoever their support system is so that they're not isolated trying to hold on to everything. Whether or not it's if they're dealing with so much grief or having a tough time, if there is a family member or a close friend or someone like that that they need to support them through the process they're doing with you. Um, just
Okay.
to just to be there with them. And also, there may be times where stuff might be going over their head because they're distracted. Just kind of like you would have someone go to the doctor with their parent just to make sure that all the information gets heard. That it may be a situation where if someone has someone that they're comfortable with, they can sign all the appropriate non-disclosures um, to be around to support them through the process. I think the next thing is just keeping in mind that I know you're an empathic person, is one is just being aware of there are times like you alluded to where someone is just a mess and this just is not going to be the time for them, and being open to having those conversations with people when it's time that it's like this isn't going to work out for you right now because you just can't, you're just not in the space to do this. Let's see if there's a way we can reschedule this, or move this around a little bit just to give you enough time to process. And I think a lot of it just has to do with listening and understanding, but also being aware and keeping in mind that you're not going to be their therapist. So it's not going to necessarily be your place of responsibility to listen to every single thing that's gone on. But also being aware that there are times where, especially if someone is a client, where it is actually appropriate to say, I think you're having a tough time. Have you thought to talk to a professional about this?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I haven't been in a situation where I thought that someone was not capable of making a decision, thankfully. Um, but I can imagine from what I've seen so far that that will probably happen at some point, especially as this pandemic rages on, I guess, for I mean, I don't have any other way to put that really. It's ongoing and we are losing so many people. So many people are suffering and experiencing just unbelievable loss. And I spoke to someone just a few days ago who had lost her husband, two children within the year
Oh, wow.
to COVID. And I don't know how she was walking around, really. Because if it were me, I wouldn't be. I know that. I can't even imagine what that feels like and I refuse to try, I'm not going there.
Hmm.
Um it's one of those things where my empathic nature um I tried to shut it off. I was like, I don't want to feel all of that. I can help her because I understand what loss feels like, but that specific issue, I can't try to get in your head about that. Just that one is too close to home. I have a husband, I have four small kids. That's not going to work for me. Um, but I was able to chat with her throughout the process and make sure she was okay, and she was fine. I think one of the things though that helped her was that her attorney was well aware of what was going on with her and how she felt. So I know that a lot of the people that come to see me, they're not so attuned to what's going on in their client's life, their personal life, outside of the the claim or the loss or the accident, whatever it might happen to be, however it would need to be described, and they aren't privy to what's happened to that person that they're representing in the last year and a half. And so sometimes it's hard to get that information, or we get that information that's brand new to everybody in the room, other than to the person that it's happened to. And so I guess another question that I have is there a delicate way to approach that before mediation? And of course, if someone has an attorney, I'm not talking to them directly. So should I just be directly asking attorneys to ask their clients about any grief they may be suffering through or any type of loss that they've experienced?
A lot of times I look at this as ways I was taught, because we're taught to ask a lot of questions that are personal. At times they sound odd. And a lot of times to me, how questions are received, a lot of times is very influenced by the intent behind the question. And I think if the intent is just being able to help your client and be there for your client and support your client, then it's relevant. If it's, I just want information just to know some information, then that's a whole nother dynamic. But I would say a simple question such as, is your client going through any major issues outside of what we're dealing with in this mediation right now?
Okay.
And if they ask you why, I just want to make sure that I'm aware of anything that's necessary to make sure that I support my client in the best way possible. Because
Right.
that's what you're trying to do. You're just trying to make sure that you're able to support them and aware of other variables that may impact how they show up.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Because I can only work with the person that shows up, right? So if there's something going on, and I can always tell that there's more happening in the background that I don't know about. If someone doesn't want
Mhm.
to tell me, I can always tell. And I might waste a bunch of time trying to figure out what that thing is if no one wants to tell me. Because, often the person who's experienced the loss doesn't want to talk about it. They don't want to break down in the middle of the mediation, which of course makes absolute sense. I wouldn't want to do that either, especially when they're in a situation where they especially when they're in a situation where they know that the loss has nothing to do with what we're talking about that day. They don't want to bring that up. Despite the fact that I will say anything that you need to talk about is welcome, it is fine, we can work through all of the issues. However, it's just human nature to not want to bring anything up that is going to be triggering, right? So I think it would behoove me and attorneys um, to ask that specific question. I love that, Dr. Erica. I think
Oh,
that's
thank
that's
you.
amazing. I'm gonna jot that down.
Well,
Jot that.
I'm glad you're even looking at this, because the other thing is I see it so often with the people I work with, is depending on what's going on with someone and how they show up, they can show up in a way that can actually hurt them in the eyes of others. So a lot of times people may be emotionally charged or going through a difficult time, and then they may be irritable or edgy or short. And that may get misread or misperceived, and whoever is communicating with them then reacts to those emotions or what their demeanor is, and it gets misread to be something totally different. And I'd hate for a situation you're dealing with someone and they're out of sorts because they're grieving, and quite frankly then the person on the other side reads it as they're an asshole.
Right. Absolutely.
you
Absolutely.
know
I can definitely imagine that situation.
I tell my patients too, it's one thing that's huge is likability. People do things for people they like. People will go through more effort. People will be more considerate. So the more bristly or prickly someone is, the less people go out of their way for. And especially in this kind of environment, if you're trying to get people to agree on something and someone's showing up and people can't read them well, then possibly something may be more contentious than it should have been.
I can definitely I can definitely see that. I can think back to some situations in hindsight that were probably more contentious than they needed to be based on what was going on in the plaintiff or the defendant's personal life.
Mhm.
Definitely. But obviously, those are situations where I either figured it out or knew, you know? So, what really concerns me are those situations where I can't figure it out myself. No one is going to tell me. Um, and and I don't know why this person is behaving a certain way. I like to think of myself as, very empathic and like I can figure out what's going on with everybody, but like I'm not I'm not crazy. I'm not, whatever. I do not believe that I can like read people's minds. So I am looking for, more signs. I know you mentioned like irritability. Is there anything else that I might want to look for in someone that could indicate that they might be going through the grief process?
Well, naturally, if someone looks despondent or tearful, or there's someone you've interacted with before, and then all of a sudden they're just really, really quiet, where potentially they're no longer really interacting with the process anymore. I think those are probably some of the largest ones. I think you hit the nail on the head, which is number one. And sometimes you just ask, and it's something as simple as, something going on with you right now that I need to know about so that I can do my best to help you.
Right.
And the thing is, if people do not tell you, you are going to do the best with what you got. The ideal is that you understand the full context of the scope of what's going on with whoever your clients are at the time. And also, naturally, people, the more open people are, the easier it is to understand what's going on, no matter what place you are in a mediation. But at the end of the day, all you can do is work with what you got. So there may be times and then there are times you don't know, and you just do the best you can. And if someone doesn't tell you, and that information could have been helpful, but they didn't disclose it, it just, unfortunately, it's one of those, it is what it is.
Yeah, that makes me sad.
Well, I think you're bringing up the fact that grief. One of the reasons it's like we talk about the stages of grief, but when someone says, how do people with grief show up? It's a very personal process. Everyone knows someone. Thank the Lord, my parents are still alive, whose parents died 20 years ago, and they've never been able to quite recover. Then you see someone that's been through everything and it's mama, and somehow they are still appearing to thrive or move forward. It's just such a personal process, and it's a different length for different people. The intensity, people often will have things come in waves, but it's such a personal experience that there may be people that become quiet, then there are people that cry their eyes out, then there are people that they don't want to talk to anybody, then there are folks that want to talk to everybody, including all of their Facebook friends.
Right. I've seen that, yes.
So there's not one real catch-all, but I think you put yourself in the best position to help others if you just ask.
Okay. So that's gonna be my like main takeaway is ask the question. Don't be shy. Ask the questions.
And if someone feels uncomfortable, then they do what they do with me. They say, "Oh, I'm just not comfortable answering that," and you're like, "Okay."
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I tell people that all the time. People are always asking me the strangest things, and I say, I'm not answering that. Why would you ask me such a question? But Okay. That makes perfect sense. I mean, just address it, I guess, head on. Don't try to dance around it. Don't hide behind anything. If just ask a question. That should just be another part of what I would ask anyone who walks through the door that I'm working with. Thank you for the thumbs up,
Oh,
Ericka.
I'm sorry if they were listening, they didn't see my thumbs up.
That's correct, which is why I narrated that. And listen, I've taken so many depositions in my life where I've had to narrate what someone is doing. It's like, and let the record reflect that Dr. Ericka just gave me a double thumbs up with a very large smile. So she approves of.
Oh, can you narrate my life? I want Winter to narrate my life.
I
That's what
mean,
I want.
I'm ready for that. I can do it.
I'm down. Let me get one more job so I can afford you.
And then I will just follow you around and do all of the narration as required. I think we will freak everybody out. Like, could you imagine me just walking behind you like Dr. Ericka nodded her head at that, so I think that we're going to move forward with that idea. Like
But I love it. I totally love it.
Dr. Ericka has looked at you disapprovingly. That's not going to happen. I'm down. I'm down. Just schedule some time on my calendar. I'm here for you.
Don't play.
If I could figure out how to use the scheduling app properly, I'd be set, but I haven't figured that out yet. So you're good. You're good. You don't have to worry about that. Um this is all so very helpful. I'm thinking of other times when I've been dealing with someone who I know is in the grief process. It's not a question, it's not something I have to figure out. And I don't always know what to say. I think back to a case that I had that has clearly stuck with me for a very long time. But it was the loss of three lives, and my goodness, I hate to even think about it. But yes, we had the loss of three lives, and two other people had been impacted in such a way that they no longer had the use of their lower limbs. So
Oh,
these are people who can't walk, right? And that's another type of grief. And so sometimes I know, and Dr. Erica, when we were doing our like pre recording call, you mentioned this to me, which is why I thought about this particular case in general, is that grief is not always about death.
right.
It's about the loss of something, right? Did I, or I may have messed that up.
You
I'm
didn't
not
mess
sure.
it
I'm
up. You
not
did
sure.
good. You can narrate again. I'm giving you a thumbs up. You did good.
Thank you. So when I'm talking to someone who I know has had a major loss or is dealing with family members who have had a major loss, I'm trying to be as sensitive as possible. I don't know. Are there tips, or is there any way that is best to deal with people going through that situation?
I think at the end of the day, the goal of when you interact with anybody going through these types of situations is acknowledging that you see them
Okay.
and acknowledging that they may be in pain. Because each person has their own thing of what may be the thing they want. There are some folks that want to talk about it, some folks that want to talk nothing about it. Some folks that want to be around people, and some folks that don't want to be around people. So it's hard to say there's one exact thing, but a lot of times it's about just acknowledging that someone is going through something so that they feel seen. and then being there if they want to talk, or just saying something simple as, I don't know what you're going through, but I want to support you. Is there anything I could do to help?
Okay, and that's definitely something that I try to do for everyone that I see, is acknowledge what they're going through or have gone through, and tell them that I'm there to listen and try to learn about what they're going through. And I'm honest with them and I say, well, I haven't gone through that, so I can't tell you I understand how you feel. I could never say that I even if I'd gone through something similar, your feelings are different person to
Right.
person regardless. So I can't say that I know how you feel, but I see you, I hear you, I am trying to understand. Is is that what you're saying is the
Hmm.
appropriate way to handle it?
Yes, that's
Okay.
spot on.
Are we keeping score? Because I'm trying to think how many of these I've gotten right.
You're doing well. You're doing well. Your scorecard is high. Your report card at this point would be all A's,
Yay! Listen, the
and your
only
behavior grade would be good too.
Listen, when I was a kid, my grades were always good. I always got A for effort, but I was always dinged for talks too much.
I can see you talking in class. I can see that.
Don't be rude.
Not causing trouble.
Not necessarily causing trouble, but yes, I did have a tendency to talk a lot.
I be chatting a little bit, just a little chat.
My parents definitely got the call that could you please get Winter to stop talking so much? She's distracting her neighbors from doing their best. Yeah. I'll own it. I'll own it. I should call those kids cuz I know exactly who they were and apologize. I should apologize, but
Oh my gosh, now you're making me laugh.
so, what do you do if someone comes in and they say that they're making all of their decisions based on the totality of their circumstances? They know that they are bringing emotions and energy from other situations that they know have nothing to do with what's going on or the topic of the specific day, what we're doing at mediation. How do you deal with that? So for me, and I know I just asked you a question and just kept talking, so it's very nice of you to just
Keep talking. Keep talking.
it's very nice of you to just nod your head at me. I appreciate that. Love you very much. But what do I do when someone says that and they're just like looking at me to solve the problem? I don't. I mean, I'm not a counselor, and I tell people that all the time. I am not a counselor. Can I listen to what you have to say? Can I empathize? Yes, I am. I am uniquely qualified to empathize with you. Absolutely. But I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist. I have I have no real qualifications to handle any of your emotional issues, and I don't really know what to tell them to help them in the, I don't know, long term, or I don't know, what am I supposed to say? Just I'll stop
It's a
talking.
remix of what you started to say, which is, I really wish I could do more for you right now, but this is what my role is as your mediator. Blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
Outside of that, unfortunately, there's not going to be a lot I can do. And smile softly.
Softly.
Uh, and then if it's something where someone is just totally falling apart, then you pleasantly ask, is there someone that you can talk to more about this?
Okay.
And then you can gently say, it might be helpful if you have someone that's a little bit more skilled in this to talk to.
Oh, I can do that. I could definitely do that.
Your answer was close. So I mean,
I
you
was
still get points.
almost there, right?
You still get points. You still get points.
Listen, the like ninth grader in me is super excited that you said that.
Oh yeah, you are on your way to honor roll and some type of principal award at an assembly.
Yay! I won't actually clap because that won't sound good on the recording, but I'm clapping. Just so you know. Thank you. So now that I know how to deal with something like that, I just will continue, I guess, to talk to people, talk about the fact that I know that they're going through something. Do I need to address exactly what that is? Or can I just say I know something is happening and I see you and I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to help.
I need clarification on the question. So do
Okay.
you mean you know something is happening in the idea that you can tell something's wrong, or you know something is happening because somebody else told you what was going on?
Well, I guess either or both at the same at the same time. Can you just answer both?
Well, if they haven't told you, then a lot of times it's probably easier to go general unless it's somebody told you something and it's extremely important.
Okay.
If it's something relatively minor, then if they don't feel comfortable sharing with you, you don't need to directly kind of start poking and prodding.
Right. Okay.
If it's something like another attorney told you that you think is going to significantly impact their experience and their outcome, then you consider possibly saying, your attorney told me blah blah blah, I'm just concerned, I just want to make sure I can help you, or I want
Okay.
to make sure I support you.
Okay. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. Absolutely.
But the thing is just like for a lot of things that we do, it's kind of like the conversation at the end of an appointment that you don't want to tear a whole band-aid open and it's time for somebody to go,
Yeah.
is that you don't want to start poking and prodding so much in places that are emotionally sensitive that someone unravels and you're not in a position to put them back together again.
Yeah. Okay. And
Which
that's go ahead.
and that's why a lot of times I am more from the set of asking them to see if they're comfortable telling you, versus just walking right in and be like, well, I heard your mama and your daddy died. What's up?
Don't make that mean that face that face you just made. Oh my god.
So it's like, if there are some people that are not going to be comfortable talking about what's going on with them, and if you start digging too hard or too aggressively, then you end up with all the spillover emotion that you're not going to be able to manage. Or then they're either falling apart because they're grieving and they're upset and they're sad, or they're just pissed off because they didn't want to deal with something and someone is seeming to insist on talking about it. And then they go in and they're pissed off. And then
Okay.
they're not half listening to you because they're pissed off at you, and they're coming off pissed off to whoever there is on the opposite side of their mediation. And none of that is going to be helpful.
Okay. So what I'm understanding you to say is ask the question and don't insist. Ask a general question and don't insist.
Mm-hmm. Because the only time I really see it would be worthwhile to insist is almost kind of the level of things I would do is if it's something that you think is going to be just super detrimental, like this person is going to go in and just be a complete disaster, and it's going to hurt them so badly that they may not recover from whatever the outcome of this mediation is. But most of the time, that's not going to be what the case is.
Right, because if I had that kind of information going into it, we wouldn't be doing it.
Right.
Okay. And that makes so much sense. Wow, I feel like I learned a lot from you today.
Oh, thank you. That's what I do. I make mental health practical.
Ah, girl, is that like your slogan? Is that your new slogan? I clapped. I didn't mean to. I hope that you can't hear that because it's gonna sound great.
It's about to be.
Yes, girl, get a TM for that. Do you have the right lawyer for that? Because I can recommend someone.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have two IP attorneys.
Okay.
Well, it helps when I got one that's my cousin.
Oh, lovely. That's awesome. Well, that works out really well. You don't need a recommendation. You got a cousin. I won't comment on my cousins. They're all very lovely people.
So
Well,
I just happen to have one cousin that's an attorney, and he does IP.
that
Who
is
knew?
really cool. No, for real though. Like, where is he at?
In Missouri.
In Missouri. Okay, that's awesome. That's really awesome. I love that. Okay.
It wasn't awesome when he wasn't letting me play games with them when I was younger, but it's awesome now.
The stories I could tell about that particular situation too. Oh well, but that's okay. I don't harbor bitterness toward them. Thank you so much, Dr. Ericka, for being here. I am so appreciative. I'm loving all of the information that you gave me. I know that it's going to improve the way that I mediate and it's going to improve my entire life. And I know it's going to do the same for my listeners. So, Dr. Ericka, can you tell us where my listeners can find you?
Oh, thank you so much. There are two easy ways to find me. One is on social media. I'm at Dr. Ericka, DoctorEricka. It's probably best to find me on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube.
Okay.
Um, and then also it's a really cool freebie called the Overwhelm Solution Blueprint, and it's an ebook that helps work people through practical solutions to deal with overwhelm. And that's at overwhelmblueprint.com.
Oh, that
Overwhelmblueprint.com.
say it again because I spoke again. I spoke over you.
Overwhelmblueprint.com.
That is super exciting. And can you tell us the names of your books?
Sure. So my latest book is Fix Your Fairy Tale, A Woman's Guide to a Great Life, Love, and Legacy. So that is my latest book. I'm super excited about it.
Listen,
Then
I love it. I love it. I love the book. Okay, I know I cut you off. I'm sorry. Go
it's
ahead.
all good. It's all good. And then I'm a co-author on Mind Matters, a resource guide to psychiatry for Black communities, along with How Amari Learned to Love School Again, a story about ADHD, which is a children's book. And then I'm a co-author in Thinking About Quitting Medicine, Volume 1. Spoiler
Oh.
alert, didn't quit.
Well, I mean, you were just thinking about it, right?
Well, the person that designed the title and led the project wanted something that was very eye-catching. Most folks weren't quitting. It was really more of the thought of what happens when you get to a point in your career where you're starting to consider whether or not you need to do something different, like a totally different career, or do something else inside your career.
Oh, that could apply to any any career, not not
Yes,
just
because
medicine.
I know a lot of your folks, a lot of attorneys that finish law school, and then they're like, this isn't quite what I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not gonna call out my entire profession, but
There are
uh,
plenty of doctors like that too.
okay. Well, I guess maybe I did just call out the entire profession, but that's okay. They'll forgive me. They
You
know
didn't
it's true.
say the entire profession. We just said there are people.
There are people,
There are people.
a multitude,
Just some people.
some people. Yeah, some people. Anyway, thank you again, Dr. Ericka. It has been amazing. I am always so happy to talk to you. You are just down to earth and practical. like your new slogan, which I love. And I'm gonna be in touch because I am constantly trying to be in your sphere.
I feel all of the love, like
Yes,
all of it. Like
it's all headed
I
your
heart
way
you.
through my computer
I
heart.
feel it. I'm
Yes.
feeling it.